What did you think of your wet welcome today?
Very good. I thought they were very nice coming out in all that rain.
Yeah, it was great.
Did you enjoy the rain?
Oh,
Yeah,
well, funny
seeing
standing there in your new coat.
Seeing as they got soaked, though, you know, we didn't mind, did
We'd like to pay a tribute for you coming on the open cut in that truck round because the kids have been waiting all night and they appreciate it.
Well, they deserved it, didn't they, waiting all night?
I hope you're wearing drip-dry clothes, were you?
No, we thought it was going to be sunny.
George,
and our cases
Yeah.
haven't gone
who
in.
selected the name the Beatles and how did you derive this particular name with
Well,
the
I think
BEA instead of
John
BEE?
got the name Beatles
In a vision,
ages ago, you know, when we needed a name and everybody was thinking of a name and he thought of Beatles.
Why the BEA instead of the BE?
Well, actually, you know.
Well, you know, if they left it with BEE, it was hard enough getting people to understand why it was BEA, never mind.
Paul, what do you expect to find here in Australia?
Australians.
Do you have any acknowledged leader of the group?
No, not really.
We heard you stood on the balcony outside, is that right? We heard you stood on your head on the balcony outside.
No, you don't have to hear some rumours.
You didn't stand here.
How did the tickets go in Hong Kong? Did you get full houses there?
I think so.
Yeah. No, there was a few 5-quid seats.
You had 5 quid left. Yeah, they were a bit hot, weren't they?
I would heard it. I would not see me in for 5 quid. Did you? I wouldn't want to see anybody.
You for 2 bob.
John, has the Mersey beat changed since you've been playing it?
Oh, well, we still keep on saying there's no such thing as Mersey, just something the press made up, you know.
Well,
We call it
you
rock
play
and
the same
roll.
way now as you did?
It's just rock and roll, just so happens we write most of it.
Has Buddy
Yeah.
Holly influenced your music at all, Joe?
He did in the early days, obviously, you know. But, no, well, not obviously, but he was one of the greats, and that. So we liked him.
Thurber, though, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, but he doesn't sing so well.
Have you been practicing up your Australian accent?
No, Colin, not at all. We can't get it, you know. All
Do you
I
think
can-
you'll be writing any songs with Australian themes when you're here?
No, we never write themes about anything, you know. Just write the same rubbish all the time.
You play the kind of music you want to play or the kind of music you think people want to hear?
No, we've been playing this kind of music for about 5 or 6 years or something like that. It's just rock and roll, you know. It just happens we write it.
Well, what do you think made the difference that suddenly put you up above the other groups?
Well,
We got a record contract.
there weren't
Speaking of
other-
records, what record do you all agree on generally as your best recording? Not the best seller, but as the best recording musically.
You mean our favourite?
Well, we always like the one we just made, don't we? So it's Long Tall Sally for me.
This is your latest
I
one.
like.
Well, it's quite new, you know.
I like.
It's not even a single.
I like. Sorry. I like You Can't Do That.
What do you like, Jimmy?
What about you, Jim? You haven't said anything.
Yeah,
How do you
I like
feel,
that
Jimmy,
one.
being in with the Beatles?
Pardon?
How do you feel being in with the Beatles, the newcomers, standing in for Ringo?
It's a good experience, man.
How is
Marvellous.
Ringo?
He's much better. He joins us on Sunday.
What do you do then, Jim?
I go back to London and they're fixing up a band for me and I do some television.
And he's away.
You seem to be progressing pretty well with your Beatle haircut.
Yeah, well, I've been growing it for about 3 months.
How long does it take to get a magnificent mane like this?
I don't know, I can't remember being without it.
Do you ever go to the barbers, John?
No, you know, I haven't had my haircut since the woman on the film cut it good, but I don't trust anybody else. So
This is the film Beatlemania, is it?
no, it's not called that. That's another story. It's wrong.
Hard Day's
Hard
Night.
Day's Night it's called.
Are you satisfied with the finished product?
Well, it's as good as anybody that makes a film who can't act, you know.
Are you individually millionaires yet?
No, that's another lousy rumour, which we were.
Brian Epstein, a millionaire.
No, even he's not one, poor fellow.
Where does all the money go?
Well, a lot of it goes to Her Majesty.
She's a millionaire.
Isn't it a bit disconcerting when you go on stage and do your numbers and nobody hears them because all the girls are screaming?
Well, it's usually adults who don't hear them. You know, like in Hong Kong, in the paper it said, the Beatles fought a losing battle against the screams. Now, compared with other people, they were quite quiet, you know, they were still shouting. And most of the kids could hear it, but adults went out thinking, I couldn't hear a thing.
Are you very conscious of your responsibilities? I mean, teenagers dwell on your every comment and action. Do you feel very responsible towards this?
No, we just sort of behave as normally as we can, you know. We don't feel as though we should preach this and tell them that, you know, let them do what they like.
You know, we never used to believe it when in the old days we used to open a magazine and it'd say so-and-so doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't go out
We used to
late.
think they were soft,
We used to
you
think
know.
of them. It's funny. So I mean, you know, we just act normally. and just hope that other people don't think we're a bit funny.
Now, you say you act normally, but how can you? How can you when you're getting so much money, when everywhere you go people are pressing around you, you can't see anything?
Well, you know, I mean, normal in the environment.
We can.
In the environment that surrounds you, like, well, you're not as normal as you can, don't you?
Correct. Right.
Plus the original record, after about 8 years, coming back and topping the charts around the world.
Well, it hasn't topped the charts around the world yet.
I think it's
sold
sold a lot
here. Out here.
Sold a lot here, but I don't think it's selling very well.
If it does, we're glad, because that's what we like, rock and roll, you know. That all starts again, goody-goody.
And also you brought back in England with the Beatles, the advent of the Beatles, people like Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard have once again become big names, haven't they?
Yeah, but there were always groups of people who liked them, you know, especially in places like Liverpool. There were always staunch groups of fans who've never gone off people like that, Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee, Little
So
Richard.
you've more or less revived rock and roll?
Well, you know, revived interest in the beat music, that's all, really.
How do you fellows feel about the sort of music that people like 10, 12, 15 years ago, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, this type of tune? Do you like it, or do you only like rock and roll?
No, but that's not the point. You know, recently Ella Fitzgerald's done. Ella Fitzgerald did "Can't Buy Me Love." Have you heard it? Well,
She did it like Ella Fitzgerald.
yeah. So you know, it
Not
doesn't.
to do it like Frank Sinatra.
This would be a great compliment to your voice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but I mean,
Recording a tune?
you know what I mean? You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be jazz. Because it's one of our songs, you know, we don't reckon we write jazz.
What do
She
you
sort
like
of did it
that
with the
kind
jazz.
of
Yeah, it's nice.
You just don't
We're not-
only like the modern...
We like all kinds of music. You know, whatever appeals to us, if it's good music for us. And it's good. I don't know.
Got lost again.
Got
Do you
lost.
find much jealousy amongst other groups in England about you? Come across it at all?
Not really, because most of the top groups out there are friends of ours, so there's none of that. You know, the jealousy is only something they mix up in the papers. You know, obviously they've got to keep the sort of thing going.
And then
all the groups that are anything over there are sort of best mates. So
and if any of them don't like us, then they don't sort of tell it to our faces. Anyway. They must just say it behind our backs.
What's your favourite entertainment medium? What do you like best, theatre or television? Or?
I like films.
He's going straight.
You've been quoted as a film
No,
star,
you
that's right.
don't mean for, you mean for us?
For the Beatles, yes.
Oh, I thought you meant for
beg
when
your
we're watching, being entertained. Oh, well, I don't know, really. I think live shows are pretty good.
But they're all good because you get a change.
Yeah.
So that's the best thing again, you know, all of them together.
Is it true that you originally auditioned for 2 record companies before you were finally signed by EMI Records?
yeah, we made tapes for Decca, and I think
And Pie.
and yeah, but we
In
didn't
fact-
actually go to Pie.
In fact, EMI turned us down first of all.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah, first of
Oh,
all,
you may laugh, you may laugh. But
Don't
they
blame
did.
him after hearing the tapes.
And then George Martin, he from EMI, he decided to sign us up just himself, you see.
I think I've got all the songs on.
How many records have you got any idea how many records you have sold around the world?
No, I
Just
have
a rough idea?
I asked our publisher to give me
Last
an
time
idea.
I
He said
heard
take
it was
weeks.
around about 30 million.
30
Oh,
million.
they're big, eh?
I don't understand.
Complaining, but you know, it's always raining.
Who owns the Jaguar now? It's Paul, isn't it?
No, it's George.
George.
No.
Do you all read music?
I gave it.
No, none of us.
Comics, we're good at comics.
You're talking about how you do like to be entertained. How do you like to be entertained? What's your bust and holiday?
Films, yeah.
Yeah.
Shows,
All of you?
nightclubs, cabaret, and things like that.
Any
You go to a
modern
nightclub or a
areas?
cabaret with that.
Yeah.
Mob.
Yeah.
Well,
don't
there's no-
like
people don't walk
cabaret.
around in mobs, you know.
Is it true you can go to the,
outside.
I know, but I mean, if you go to a nightclub, you're not going to bump into 500 kids, are you?
this
You never
nightclub in
know,
Liverpool, the Blue Angel, is that a nightclub you can sort of go to and relax?
It was when we
A
were
lot
up
of
there a
friends.
lot, you know. I don't know. A lot of places in Liverpool have got sort of, you know,
Commercialised.
commercialised, so people come from all over the place just to have a look at them, you know. So I don't know now, I haven't been for years.
Have you played the Cavern at all lately?
Haven't played that for, I don't know.
Oh,
George, Tom, this might be a good one for you to answer. Did you people want to come to Australia?
But they're not booked completely without our knowledge. We're told that there's a possibility you might be going here or there, and if we didn't like it, we'd say.
So you didn't want to
come? We said, yeah, because, you know, it's the place to go.
Well, great.
What was your Darwin reception like, by the way?
It's very good. We didn't know.
Yeah, it
we
was
were going
3
to
in the
go.
morning, I think, and we didn't know until we got about an hour away from it.
But apparently the press in Darwin was known all day.
Apparently, no, I think they guessed.
Only some fella said that the police have been trying to keep it quiet here all day.
Well, a BOAC spokesman said
Advertising again.
that it wasn't definite, but there was a slight
He's been trying to get one in
possibility.
for hours.
Can I now?
Here he is
Right.
now.
Fellas, did you enjoy doing the Shakespearean excerpt in your TV show?
Yeah.
What?
Except he made us rehearse for days.
And we still got it wrong.
Would you like to play legitimate Shakespeare?
Yeah.
Can't stand it.
Did you like the costumes?
Yeah, they were good for a laugh.
Mod, wasn't
This
it?
lantern doth the owner's moon present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been liking it a lot to the Marx Brothers. Do you find this a compliment? Do you dig this sort of
Well, it's a
thing?
compliment. Well, not for the half. You know, they're funny, aren't they?
When are you going to play the London Palladium?
Oh, we don't know.
Would you like to?
Oh, we've done
We've
it.
done it a couple of times.
You know, I don't know nothing or anything
See?
about.
What's the
No,
group
we're
you
not.
play with in England, Jimmy?
Huh?
What's the group you play with in England?
Well, I played with a lot of groups in England. Just before I left, I was playing with a rhythm and blues band.
You were the
Georgie.
Blue Flames, weren't you, for a while?
Yeah, that's right. Well, only for a matter of days. It was only till Friday I only knew that I was doing this on Wednesday. You know.
Did Brian Epstein manage you?
I don't really. No, he doesn't.
I don't really know. You'd know it if he did.
Jimmy, what was your first reaction when you were told that you were going to play with the Beatles?
I couldn't believe it, really.
Did you have to get their style?
No, we only rehearsed about 5 or 6 numbers, which took up an hour, and then
Away you went.
yeah.
If one of you
Frightening?
stopped being a
Huh?
Beatle,
Pretty frightening?
The first show was very frightening, yeah. But they reassured
But
me.
he did grand. He did
A grand job he did,
grand job.
Excellent.
George, if one of you stopped being a Beatle, what do you think you'd do?
I think I'd train elephants in the zoo.
That's quite
It's reported that you're the keen businessman of the group, is that right?
Well, yes, that's what it said in the paper. But, you know, I mean, I've never heard of it. It's a new one on me. And maybe, I don't know.
Do you have a
haven't tried
contract
yet.
to remain together as a group known as the Beatles? In other words, do you have contracts between yourselves?
Well,
We've
we're
got-
a partnership.
there's
I
some
think,
sort
if
of a
that's what you
contract.
mean.
No, what I meant
Oh,
was
you mean
possibly
personally,
could
just
George suddenly decide to leave the Beatles group? Could you do that?
I think we could.
Well,
Of course he could, because I mean we would stop him.
no, you know,
Even
if
if they had a
leave,
contract.
but even
we'd have
yeah.
trying to keep him, you know,
Standing on
struggling.
I think there is a contract.
not wanting to play.
That's what I
There's
thought.
there is a contract between the 4 of us, but if I wanted to leave, then they wouldn't try and stop me, or they wouldn't sue me, I don't think. Would you, fellas?
Now apparently you earn many, many thousands of pounds a year, but how much money do you actually get to spend from your manager?
Well, we don't get money from him, we get money from our accountant, you know. All our money
Are
goes
you on a
to
regular
him.
basis?
Yeah, well, we don't hardly need anything, you know, because most things are sort of paid through the company, you know. We just hardly spend anything in cash. Just cigarettes and things, and even that, they bought by our road managers thing, you know.
We get a certain amount a week, and we've got at least half of it left.
What about
every
clothing?
week, 'cause we
Does
don't
also
use it.
come from the accountant too?
No.
Bills?
Well, sometimes.
Yeah,
you know.
well, usually we get our tailor to, you know, we order a few suits or how many we want, and then he'll send the bill in to the company, because it's much easier for him to do that as well, and it's easier for us.
Well, you
Now,
got 2 suits.
This leads into the next question. Now, on stage you all dress literally the same, but off stage I notice even here that you're all dressed quite different. Now, is this also something you make up yourselves? Or?
No, you don't want to. I mean, originally we didn't dress.
Who decided you to change from leather suits to natty suits?
It was, I think we
Brian,
decided.
I think it was
Brian.
Well, he tried to persuade us.
Because when we went down south, it was all right in Liverpool around there, but as soon as we went anywhere else in sort of jeans and leather jackets, they sort of didn't want to know, you know, because they wanted everybody in grey suits doing that.
You single chaps,
You know how they do it.
you single chaps really don't have any firm plans to get married in the next...
No, I don't like the idea of marriage. It's a bit frightening.
Why is that? Tell us more about that.
You know, it is, isn't it?
And we're all trying to save up a bit before we get married.
Did you enjoy your holidays to Tahiti and the Caribbean, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
we met one of your...
Some fella came swimming behind me saying, "You're having a good time," didn't he?
Yeah.
Saying I've come all the way from Sydney.
Yeah, as if it was my fault.
Why did you split up and take your holidays?
People like them.
It makes it harder for people with the press to catch us up. If we all got together, it's a cinch, you know, going to an airport.
And anyway, besides all that, Paul and Ringo fancied going to wherever they went.
Didn't you ask him something about Liverpool, though? That wasn't the question, was it?
Well, I
Australia.
said,
Yes, we did.
You coming from Liverpool,
Yeah.
what sort of idea do people in Liverpool have about Australia?
Sorry. He was right.
There's a theory that you're almost as popular with adults as you are with teenagers, and that when teenagers find this out, that they will probably lose interest in you. Do you think this is true?
Yeah, well, go on.
Maybe.
No, I'm not saying a word. I don't know. What do you
A
think?
couple of photographs recently came from America showing all of you, I think it was George and Paul, the one I saw, swimming. But both photographs in different places showed you with shirts on. Now, is this a regular thing to swim with a shirt on?
I think we were only posing for the press, and we weren't really swimming.
Oh, I see.
We just
But
jumped
Might
about
have been
in
just
about 2
standing
inches of water.
I don't think we were actually swimming, as it were, with shirts. Because we
Frightened of
always
your white
wear
skin.
overcoats when we're swimming.
White skins with sometimes.
Johnny, what do you attribute to something like Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock, the original record, after about 8 years coming back and topping the charts around the world?
Well, it hasn't topped the charts on the world yet, has it?
Well,
I think
it
it's
does,
sold
I
a
think.
lot
It's sold a lot
here.
out here.
Sold a lot here, but I don't think it's selling very well.
If it does, we're glad, because that's what we like rock and roll, you know. That whole stuff, again, goody-goody.
And also you brought back in England with the Beatles, the advent of the Beatles, people like Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard have once again become big names, haven't they?
Yeah, but there were always groups of people who liked them. You know, especially in places like Liverpool. There were always staunch groups of fans who'd never people.
Behind me saying, "You're having a good time," didn't he?
Yeah.
Saying I've come all the way from Sydney.
Yeah, as if it was my fault.
Why did you split up and take your holidays?
People liked them.
It makes it harder for people with the press to catch us up. If we all got together, it's a cinch going to an airport.
And anyway, besides all that, Paul and Ringo fancied going to wherever they went, and I don't know what happened to us. Somebody just gave us the ticket. And we just ended up there.
When Jerry and the Pacemakers were out here, they rubbished Australian beer. Have you had a go at Australian beer yet? Have you tried it?
I'm not keen on
I don't
beer.
like any beer, really.
What do you like?
Scotch.
Scotch and Coke, yeah.
Teenage stuff.
Is that a drink that's drunk a lot in England?
No,
I don't
we
know.
got it in Germany because we didn't like German beer.
Apparently the real one's rum and coke. That's the one that everyone knows.
Oh, yeah.
But someone gave us Scotch and coke.
They all drink it in Tahiti, we found out.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
their sort of normal drink.
What,
You
Scotch
did
and
the
coke?
Scotch and Tony.
But it's
No,
caught on a
very
bit,
good.
Scotch and Coke.
Yeah. When you work, is it true that you have a lot of Coke backstage? You drink a lot of Coke
Yeah.
while you work?
Well, you know, just cold drinks. I mean, if it happens to be lemonade, it doesn't matter.
How do you feel before a show? Do you feel nervous?
Yeah. Before most
Depends on the
shows.
show, where it is and what it is.
How big it is?
Yeah.
Well, this is a new place.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, even if it can be a small show and a very new place, and you still get very nervous. You get nervous on the most ridiculous of things too. The Mersey Beat Awards. When we got an award from a Liverpool paper, the Mersey Beat, and you know it was only quite a small thing. The award giving compared to some of the big shows we've been doing, but we were all nervous.
One for Harold
apart
Wilson
from its value to your act, do you like wearing your hair this way?
Yeah, well, we've had it a long time, and we got used to it. It's like you're naked when it was cut.
And it's not as though somebody made us wear it like this.
And
You know,
people were
we
wearing
had it
it
like
like
this
years
before
ago,
we
yeah.
started making records, didn't we? Didn't
When,
we?
why? Economy?
Pardon?
No, but I mean, it
just happened.
stupid the way people can be so odd. I mean, it's only since the First World War I read. You all went around like that because he'd cutting the biddies out from the trenches. That's what I read. Before then, you all had it long. Yes,
That's
I
right,
read that the
that's
other
right,
day.
that's all. Don't believe it. I do.
True, but I
Not my dad.
It's a good excuse.
Not my
Yeah,
dad.
in the First
My
World
dad's
War.
got no biddies. No, he
Got
hasn't.
you, yeah.
Which one? Your dad's a bus driver, isn't he, George?
Well, he was.
He was.
He's got a gold plated book.
What do your family think about all the attention channels?
Well, naturally they like it, and they're all proud, and just like if you had a son, what was a Beatle, or even if you didn't, you're bound to like it more than the others will.
You live fairly close together, isn't it?
Yeah.
All fellows who work so close together so often and stay and travel together, you must have an occasional argument. So how do you work it out in your system apart from going away on holiday?
Well, it's usually two against one or three against one.
We never have a serious argument.
Or whoever can shout loudest. Another one.
It's reported that the Rolling Stones are the Beatles. Comment on that?
Well, it's untrue.
Sometimes other things are reported.
Oh, yeah.
Dave Clark was bigger than us last
They're big, you know.
month, and Brian
But
Poole the month before.
record things like that. It's true, they're not big enough, but they're big. That's the truth.
But they wouldn't have the teenage crowds gathering wherever they appeared, as you boys would.
Well,
you know,
they've got a big
they're
following
very
in Britain.
popular.
This all harks back. Don't make us release as many singles. I mean, a lot of people say the Beatles are slipping because their record's number 15, but they forget it's already sold about 3 million.
Yeah, I mean, but that happened with our second record. No, the third one from EPU, because it sold more than previously, it went out quicker, or something like that. Everyone said, oh, that's it then, and they've done it, every single we've made, that's it, so you just give up.
Yeah, and also, the thing about the records now is that they have an awful lot of advance. Is it?
Paul.
Paul speaking. Okay. They have a lot of advance sales, so they come in the first week very high, and then sell for about 2 weeks, and then sort of go out very quickly. They've sold an awful lot of records, but it's still, to people who don't know about the record business, it looks a bit off, and I think that's it.
Did you read the comments that Hal Wallace, the American producer who produced Will Presley's film, said about you in a recent
Now, what did he say?
interview? He sort of referred to you as four untalented men, Shaggy sort of treats
No
you as-
Coward said that.
No Coward said
Wonder if they know each other.
Would you look upon this as jealousy, mainly because
Well,
an American, because you're not American?
No,
and so
let's
he
face
doesn't-
it, to some people, we've got nothing.
It'd be useless for everybody to like it. You've got to have somebody knocking you up. Those people still say, oh, what's he knocking them for? They're all right, aren't
Yeah.
they? It's good when people knock you.
It doesn't matter, there's nobody that everybody likes.
You've got a lot of songs up your sleeve that you haven't recorded, haven't been published, quite naturally. But you still keep writing songs, that's the thing?
Yeah.
Enough supply for...
No, but the old songs, most of them aren't very good anyway, they were when we were really starting off. One or two, Love Me Do was an old song.
Do you have any individual ambitions to be more than a member of the singing group the Beatles ultimately?
No.
It's enough.
How many people travel with you in Britain?
Depends where we're going.
Three.
Now we've got 3 people. We've got a fellow who looks after the equipment, then our road manager, and then we've got Mr. Epstein's personal assistant here, Derek Taylor.
Correct.
That's in there.
Correct, Derek?
Yes, correct.
He's a comedian.
Does anybody advise you about what sort of songs to record or to release?
No.
Well, our A&R man advised when we've made, say, 2 tracks, he advises us as to which is the more. But it's normally we agree amongst ourselves.
And has George and Ringo ever tried to compose songs?
Yeah.
George is written.
I thought it was always Paul and John.
Well, it is. They've written every song we've ever recorded except one. Epstein's.
I thought it was always Paul and John.
Well, they've written every song we've ever recorded except one. And I wrote that one.
When Brian Epstein took over managing you, how did he first promote you? How did he first start promoting you?
Well, when he first started handling us, he wasn't a manager, in show business. He was a director of his father's business.
Come here, fellas, one last question.
So anyway, I'll tell you later.
One last question. Do you enjoy being the Beatles, as much as you did, say, a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah. It's a different way, of course, but still nice.
Well, that just about sums it up. And that's the end of our outside telecast, which was inside what is usually the dining room of the Sheriff's Hotel, right opposite
Bye, everybody.
And we'll say a very good afternoon.
Goodbye. Ta-da.
No other event had a greater effect on modern popular culture than Beatlemania. It permeated every level of society on a global scale. The Fab Four were demigods to an entire generation. The evidence is everywhere. No other musician's death was mourned more deeply than John Lennon's. Paul McCartney is today the world's wealthiest recording artist. Although they live in relative seclusion, George Harrison and Ringo Starr continue to garner headlines with their every move. It has been 30 years since the Beatles first burst upon the popular music scene, but nothing, it seems, can diminish our fascination with them. They revolutionized the dress, hairstyles, attitudes, and beliefs of an entire generation, and their impact on the lives of fans born even after they disbanded is powerful as well. Despite 25 years of media scrutiny, George Harrison, the quiet Beatle, remains the most enigmatic, elusive, and misunderstood of the Fab Four. His public persona is that of a dark, brooding man, cloaked in the folds of Eastern mysticism, quiet, introspective, serious, and jealously guarding his privacy. John Lennon, however, was a different proposition altogether. Pre-Yoko, John was still the archetypal working-class intellectual upscale acid head. His own inner radar ever on the lookout for deeper, more meaningful levels of experience to help shape his already generously overloaded sensory framework. Once Yoko settled in for the duration, however, things quickly changed, and Lennon became forever tangled in her wacky, self-indulgent, artsy headspace. What isn't generally known is that towards the end of his life, John had pretty much rejected Yoko's influence over his work in favor of the straight-ahead, pop-rock idiom that reached out and grabbed him as a kid back in Liverpool. Paul McCartney's story, meanwhile, is considerably less complex. He caught the showbiz bug early on from his charismatic piano-playing dad and the old Hollywood movies that sparked into the cluttered front parlor of the McCartneys' humble two-up, two-down. Aside from a brief psychedelic avant-garde detour in the middle 60s, the wide-eyed entertainer has pretty much stuck to that credo, proliferating a long string of pretty, toe-tapping, largely inconsequential ditties, tailor-made for the undemanding international top 10. Staunchly denying the deep river that runs through him, McCartney could have been a hell of a musician, but he settled on triple platinum rock stardom instead. Pity. All of which brings us to Ringo. Intrinsically much more than the lucky drummer who won the pools when he first sat down to keep time for the savage young Beatles, he remains one of the most well-loved bit players in the checkered history of popular music. The consistent twaddle that he is in any way stupid or inept is just that. An engaging little man with a penchant for transforming the mundane into the magical, Starr may turn out to be the most subtly brilliant of the lot. A sparkly bearded Buddha playing out this incarnation with humor and compassion. Unlike almost anyone else who made their mark as popular entertainers, the Beatles were unique in their ability to so accurately funnel their life experience into both their music and engaging public statements. As armchair philosophers, the Fab Four weren't bad, honestly shoveling their hard-won perceptions year after year into everything they did. In comparison to today's self-involved crop of empty-headed crooners, John, Paul, George, and even Ringo have generally had something interesting to say. As George Harrison once commented when asked why the so-called current potentate pop stars didn't really impart too much of importance in their music anymore, he reeled off, "Because they don't know anything, do they?" Apart from the marvelous music, the boys had quite a lot of interest to say as well. Remember John's headline-grabbing bed-ins? Paul's public statements on the relative merits of all natural LSD, or George's stint as the materially exhausted wannabe Hare Krishna? All things considered, the Beatles were really quite wonderful geezers, rank amateurs as aspiring gods, but insightful musicians with open hearts and minds to match. Here then is an evening's worth of entertainment of the really fine things the Beatles and their friends have had to say over the last 30 years on such varied subjects as God, drugs, music, their acrimonious breakup, and even themselves. This collection of interviews with the Fabs and their mates is the end result of years of peeking in on the Beatles' turbulent lives through any window I could find. A strange way to spend the better part of one's youth, I know, but what's done is done. I just hope it helps the people that sincerely love them to gain a little insight into what it all really meant. As for me, I've traveled down that road about as far as I can go. Anyone who wants to carry on from here will just have to make it on their own. Anyway, let me know how you get on, and do enjoy the show. Musical geniuses that they obviously were, the Beatles were terrific with the media. When out on the road playing their manic 20-minute concerts, the Beatles generally sat down and talked to the media at each stop. Here's a brief example.
We're visiting with 4 young men, and if I just mention their first names, such as Paul and George and Ringo and John, I doubt if you'd know about whom we're speaking. But if I said we're here this afternoon with the Beatles, and if we were in England, I think we'd get a great big rousing hurrah, wouldn't we, boys?
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's see. We have, to my right here, we have Paul McCartney. Now, within the past year, you have mushroomed and tremendously almost out of sight in such popularity. What was the click? What levered this great rage for the Beatles?
Well, it's funny, really, now you mentioned that. But I think it was the Palladium show, you know, the television show in England, and then following hot in the footsteps, and we had the Royal Variety Command Variety performance. It's difficult to say that, actually. No, Royal Variety Command performance for the Queen Mother, you know. Mm-hmm. And it all came up from there, really. The national newspapers got hold of it, and they got hold of Ringo, you know. And Mike Brown found about it, yeah. A lot of things, you know, a lot of columnists and things got onto the idea and started calling it Beatlemania.
Well, let's ask Ringo here. Now, you're the drummer. We caught your act at the Olympia the other evening. How long have you been beating those skins?
Oh, about 5 years now. I've been with the boys about 18 months now. I've been with other groups before that. But that's 5 years.
Since you boys have gained your current popularity, have there been many other organizations trying to imitate you or perhaps take the thunder away from you? Let's ask John Lemon this.
Well, I suppose a couple of people have jumped on the railway carriage, I mean the bandwagon, but it doesn't really matter, you know, because it's flattery and it sort of promotes the whole idea of us. If we're away and there's a few little Beatles still going, it'll remind people of us.
Well, Paul, let's go back to you for a moment. When anyone ever sees your pictures, the first thing that strikes them is naturally your hairdo. You've been referred to, or hair-don'ts. Yeah. Some people have written as though you were having the sheepdog cut, or perhaps an early Caesar. What do you call it, and how come you cut it that way?
Well, you know, Bob, to us it just sort of seems a natural thing, really, because it all arose this. We came out of the swimming baths one day, and you know, your hair sort of flops about after the swimming baths. Well, it stayed that way, you see, nobody bothered to comb it. Mm-hmm. And it sort of stayed in a style, so we've never really called it anything. I don't know, until the papers got hold of it, and they called it the Beatles style, so you know, I suppose we go along with them now, really.
Do you go to the barber at all?
Well, you know, now and then, and do and don't.
Just to keep it trimmed, huh?
Yeah, just to keep it trimmed, but sometimes we do it ourselves, you know. Yeah, the other thing is that it's really only our eyebrows that are growing upwards. That's the
Well, we've been told that in England today there's this Beatlemania going on. Now, what do you describe? What would you say Beatlemania is? That all the girls scream whenever they see you and they perhaps faint waiting in line? Let's be immodest a moment. What is the attraction, huh?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's that dressing gown. George's dressing gown is definitely a big attraction.
No, I don't think any of us really know what it is. We've been asked this question an awful lot of times, but we've never been able to come up with an answer yet, because I think it's a collection of so many different things, like happening to be there at the right time, at the right moment, at the wrong place. No, but a little bit of originality in the songs, a little bit of a different sound. I don't know, it's an awful lot of things. Maybe the gimmick of the haircut as well, the luck, getting into the national press at the right time. So it's an awful lot of luck.
All these things and more.
Well, you mentioned songs. Now, I understand you boys write your own material?
John and I write them. This is Paul speaking. John and I write.
Paul, yes. Well, how do you think of an idea? Do you get together regularly, or an idea pops in your mind, you say, let's sit down and do it?
If an idea does pop in your mind, then you do sit down and say, let's do it, yeah. But if there's no ideas, and say we've been told we've got a recording date from about 2 days' time, then you have got to sit down and sort of slug it out. But you normally get, first of all, just a little idea, which doesn't seem bad. And you go on, and then it builds up from that. It varies every time, though, really, you know.
Well, Paul, we've seen you here at the Olympia. Can you compare the French audience with what you're familiar with back in England?
Well, there's a lot of difference, because in England, you see, the audience is a 75% female. Here, 75% male. And that's the main difference, really, because they still appreciate it, but you don't get the full noise and the atmosphere of a place.
No screams. No screams and fainting. Why is it 75% boys?
I don't know, but I think they don't let the girls out at night in France. One of the reasons.
I think it's your dressing gown.
Somebody said that they still have to have chaperones, a lot of them, you see. Whereas in England they're out, you know, and the boys, like, yeah, and it's funny, it's the same in Germany. All the boys, you know, like the rock, and you know, it's usually the same on the continent. I don't really know why.
Well, Paul, we see the I Want to Hold Your Hand as #1 on the hit parade, and we have a copy of it here right now. So let's sit back for a moment and listen to it. How did you come to write that, I Want to Hold Your Hand?
Let's see. We were told, this was one of the songs that we were told we definitely had to get down to it, we had to get working. So we went and we found, it was an old disused house that we found, and we were just sort of walking along with it. And we just thought we've got to really get this song going. So we got down in the basement of this disused house, and there was an old sort of piano there. It wasn't really disused, you know, the house, there was sort of rooms to let. We found this old piano, and we started banging away there, and we stayed there. And there was a little old organ there too. So we were just having this sort of informal jam session down there, and we started banging away. And suddenly, just a little bit came to us. I think it was just sort of the cat's line. And so we started working on it from there, and we got our pens and paper out, and we just wrote the lyrics down, and eventually, you know, we had some sort of a song. So we went back and we played it over to our recording manager, and he seemed to like it, you know, so we recorded it the next day.
Do all your songs have a basic theme or story or message?
No.
Well, that's a
quick answer. No, they don't, but there's one thing that nearly always seems to run through our songs. People always point it out to us. That's the I and you and me always seems to be in the title. You know, I want to hold your hand, she loves you, and love me do, and things like this. Well, I think the reason for that really is that we nearly always try and write songs which are a little bit more personal than others, you see. So by having these prepositions, whatever you call them, I and me and you, in the titles, makes the songs a little bit more personal. But I think that's the only sort of basic message that does run through our songs.
And you coined this, yeah, yeah, yeah. Isn't that really sweeping England right now? The phrasing, yeah, 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 on all the songs?
Yeah, well, that was the sort of main catchphrase from She Loves You. But we stuck that on, we'd written the song nearly, and then we suddenly needed more, so we had yeah, yeah, yeah. And it caught on, they used it for, if you're going to be with it or hip.
It's sort of a trademark for you boys now.
Yeah, we'll have to write another song with it.
Well, Paul, what do you think of your trip to the States? I understand in about a week or 10 days you're going to be on the Ed Sullivan Show. Could you tell us about it?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to do Ed Sullivan Show in New York, and we're taping one for later release sort of thing. And we're looking forward to those. Then we go down to Florida, Miami. Can't wait. And we do another Ed Sullivan there. But I think before that, we do a Carnegie Hall, don't we? Yeah. Those, yeah. We play on Carnegie Hall.
How were you selected for Ed Sullivan? Was he in England, caught your act or something?
Well, when we were flying back, this is the story we heard. We were arriving from Stockholm into London Airport, and at the same time, the Prime Minister and the Queen Mother were also flying out, but the airport was just overrun with teenagers. There was thousands of them waiting for us to get back, and Ed Sullivan was supposed to have arrived at that time and wondered what was going on, and he found out it was us arriving. And also our manager went over to the States with another singer called Billy J. Kramer, and he did a couple of TV shows over there, and while he was over there, our manager got the bookings with Ed Sullivan. But he'd also heard of us from this London airport thing, and that's about it.
And how about a movie? Is there a movie in the future?
Yeah. We've been asked by United Artists to do a feature movie.
Will it be dramatic or just strictly wrapped around your singing?
No, we don't know yet, really, what it's going to be like. I don't think we'll have to do an awful lot of acting. I think it'll be written around the sort of people that we are, and there'll be 4 characters in it, very like us.
Well, do you plan to compose 2 or 3 songs specifically for the film?
Well, actually, we've got to compose 6 songs specifically for the film. We've got to get down to that, too. That's a job.
Then you boys really haven't had much of a chance to see Paris, have you?
No, not really.
Not really, no.
What do you think of it so far?
Well, it's nice, quite nice,
How about the French girls compared to the British girls?
Oh, we haven't seen any yet.
John?
Yeah, well, I'm married. I didn't notice them.
Oh, we'll go back to Paul then.
Yeah, I think they're great.
Oh, you're single?
Yeah, well, I think the French girls are fabulous. Yeah.
But we have seen more French boys than French girls, so I mean, we can't really tell.
Well, perhaps when you get to the Ed Sullivan Show, there'll be more girls for you.
I hope so.
Yeah. Any of you been to America before?
Yeah, me. I went in September just for a holiday for 3 weeks.
Just George Harrison. Well, I see our time is up, boys, and thank you very much, Beatles, for being our guest.
Tony Mansfield, Billy J. Kramer's erstwhile drummer, looks back on the manic heyday of Beatlemania.
Pete Best. Dead nice guy. Can't play the drums though. I didn't think so anyway. I'm sorry, Pete, if you ever hear this. But it's the truth. Dead nice person. Gentleman. Didn't fit in with the Beatles. Didn't play enough. He wasn't tasteful. He didn't play enough. Maybe afterwards he became a better drummer, but he certainly wasn't I didn't think his drumming... I'm talking as a drummer now, about another drummer. I didn't think he did the job properly. But as a person, he was fabulous. Dead nice guy. I liked him. First Beatle I ever saw. Well, actually, he wasn't a Beatle. He was Ringo Starr, or Richard Starkey. I met him in 1961 in the summer when he was playing at Petheli. Oh, Richie and I used to be quite friendly. You know, I think drummers usually are. And I always liked his playing. I used to watch him play a lot. He was playing at Butlin's holiday camp for Rory Storm. He was the drummer with Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. And they were working in the Rock and Calypso bar every night with Rory. And the next time I met Richie was a couple of years later at the Cavern when we just finished doing a lunchtime session on our own. And I was packing my drums up, and they were, in fact, that photograph you've seen in the Sunday Times with me taking my drums down, not putting them up, I was taking them down. They were having publicity photographs done for the Beatles, and I saw the back of Richie, and he had these knitting needles for sticks. And I says, "What the bloody hell have you got them for?" He says, "Well, I play too loud, so they told me I should use lighter sticks," you know. And I said, "Who are you playing for now?" You know, because I said, "Which band are you playing in?" She says, I'm playing in the Beatles. First time I saw the Beatles play wasn't with Richie, it was with Pete Best. It was at the Cavern. They were doing a lunchtime session. And we'd heard about the Beatles because we'd played at the Lowlands Club in West Derby, just outside Liverpool. And we saw a photograph of them. And I remember the comment we all made was, "Oh, he's got an old Premier kit," and, "Oh, look at that funny bass he's got," you know, that Hofner bass, you know, which... You know, they look different. You know, we were all into wearing suits and all looking clean-shaven like Cliff Richard and the Shadows. We modelled ourselves onto that. They were playing to the fans, you know, and they dressed like the fans. They were, you know, I think very artistic through John and Stuart Sutcliffe's and with Astrid, of course, you know, with those photographs she did with them. With Stuart had a lot to do with their hairstyle and the way they dressed, you know, to be underground, bohemian. So we used to have all the Dolites, the people who used to sit at the front, you know, the regulars, you know. Right.
And we felt very honoured to play at the Cavern because we were from Manchester. And I always remember my mother and father saying when I came home after working the Cavern, they always knew I'd been to Liverpool because they could smell the Cavern on me because they used this like disinfectant stuff, you know. And I used to sweat like a pig, you know. And you could always smell it on your clothes when you got home, you know.
Right.
But they were hard days, and I must admit I really enjoyed playing at the Cavern. The fans were great, you know, they were very receptive to us, and we had to work very hard. Once we joined Billy J. Kramer and had John and Paul write Do You Want to Know a Secret? Well, they didn't write it specifically for Billy J. Kramer. In fact, the J came through John Lennon. John suggested they put J there. Billy Jesus Kramer, I think, was the rationale behind it. But we kept it down to J. I think that was definitely John's idea. We started working a lot with the Beatles, basically because Brian was now wanting to put the boys on the road, and he had Jerry and the Pacemakers, ourselves, the Big Three, Tommy Quickly, Johnny Sanders and the Remo Four, and then Cilla Black. You know, he started getting a real, you know, good stable together. It's very much like being in prison when you work with the Beatles on the road or doing a theatre with them, because you can't go out of the theatre, you know, you got to stay in, and you usually get in early, right? And we used to have police escort to bring us in and to take us out. They very much kept to themselves. They had to. They started going further away. The more famous they became. I think the last time we worked with them was the Beatles Christmas show, which was the end of '64, I think, right, at the Finsbury Park Empire. The kids were screaming, which was, you know, it pissed you off actually, because you couldn't really, it didn't matter what you played, you know, as soon as George, you know, shook his head or you know, Paul winked, you know, or waved his hand, all the girls used to go crazy. The second record we did was written by John and Paul, who came down to the studio, to EMI. We recorded in Studio 2. They had the lyrics written on the back of Senior Service packet. I never knew the record at all. The only record I'd ever done with Kramer, which I knew before I went in the studio, was Do You Want to Know a Secret? We learnt the song in the studio. We did the bedding tracks first of all, and then the next. Well, we had 4 records written by John and Paul for us. The first record was Do You Want to Know a Secret? The B-side was one of the first Lennon McCartney songs, which will be I'll Be on My Way, very much a Buddy Holly influence thing. The next song was Bad to Me, the second record, that was a monstrous hit for Billy. That was a gold. The B-side of that was I Call Your Name, which they later recorded themselves. On From a Window, Paul came down with John,
I always remember John stood in front of me, you know, singing, late yesterday night I had a shite out of a window. I remember him coming out with that, we're all laughing, you know, and I remember at the end of the track I farted. George Martin was an extremely interesting person to work with, great musician, great arranger, and, you know, you respected the man. We had a lot, same with Brian had that, gave you that flair of, you know, authority. You know, Mr. Epstein, you know, Eppie, Brian, we all respected Brian very much. I remember Brian, you know, used to get very annoyed at Billy, and we were doing Thank You Lucky Stars, and he'd come running in one day in Birmingham, you know, we'd done, and Brian came in, and he looked at Billy, and he said, the Dakotas were lovely. Oh, no, in his nice posh accent, he said, the Dakotas were lovely, but you, Billy, just did that and just steamed off out of the room like a little boy, you know. And we were all dying to crack up, you know, laughing, but you couldn't, you know. Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure, Brian was, you know, gay, you know, but we never really thought of him, you know, as being gay. Brian was infatuated, and the Beatles were his life, you know. I think Jerry Marsden and the Pacemakers, Billy J, ourselves. You know, we worked. We you know, we were around at the right time, very much so, and jumped on the Beatle bandwagon. Why not? Why shouldn't I admit it? Yes, we were. You know, we were talking about Paul McCartney, and I remember Paul coming in with some of the some of the tracks, like I Saw Her Standing There, right? I remember him coming in talking about that, and he had an acetate of that, which we heard in Dick James's office, and then he played us From Me to You on the piano, and that was written on also on a back of, I think it was Senior Service cigarettes, I'm not sure, something like that. I know it's a packet of cigarettes on him. He was reading the lyrics of, you know, and banging on the old Giuliano, you know, what do you think of this? No, piano wasn't really in tune either. They worked very hard, and I remember doing a week in Llandudno with them, and they were rehearsing during the day at the theatre, you know, because we were doing a variety show. I remember him borrowing my razor. He used to call it the rabbi because it made such a noise, like, you know, like you're praying, you know. And when we're on the road together, he says, "Can I use the rabbi, Tony?" Oh, he made such a row, you know, an electric razor. They used to borrow makeup off us. We always used to put makeup on, you know. Yeah. And oh yeah, you know, because you had white faces, you know. These are the days when we used to wear suits and everything.
Beatles intimate and Paul McCartney collaborator Denny Laine remembers his original inspiration in entering the crazy world of show business. Tell me about the first gig you ever played with the Beatles, and try to remember a little bit about that night and the first time you ever laid eyes on them.
Yeah. Well, the Old Hill Plaza, you know, they had revolving stages, you know, the kind of thing where one band finishes and the other one, as the other one's been announced, they swivel around and that's it. We were closing the first half, and the Beatles took over from us. Now, all I remember is, you see, I used to work in a store. It's the only job I ever had was a music store in Birmingham. And I was listening all day long, obviously, to the radios, which were on, you know, as part of the sales job. And I heard Love Me Do. Now, from that day, I heard that because it was an original song, because it was harmonies, I guess. I was pretty sort of taken to the Beatles, and so when I did that gig, and that they were, I think, promoting Love Me Do, and maybe the next single after that, which was Please Please Me, was it? I don't know. And so I was a little bit of a fan already, and when they did that and all the people were screaming and they were doing autographs afterwards, I was pretty impressed, I must admit, and that's what made me decide that I wanted to move to London and go that next step further.
Obviously, you know, you were, as Denny and the Diplomats, you and worked with the Beatles. Tell me about the first time you can recall working with the Beatles as the Moody Blues.
Well, by that time we had already met the Beatles. I mean, we all used to meet in a club called the Ad Lib Club, which was not really a rock place. It was a club, very expensive club, where like the drinks were very expensive. We met the Beatles and other people in the business over a period of, well, you know, a few months. We eventually got I got friendly with George and then John. Gradually got to know them all. Then as a friend of theirs, I suppose, or as friends of theirs, and we used to have parties they used to come to, we were invited to do the tour, and then eventually we signed to NEMS Enterprises, which is Brian Epstein's company, and used to do lots of NEMS dates, different places. But we did the Beatles tour because they invited us, to close the first half.
What kind of specific memories do you have of touring with the Beatles in those days? Any funny little anecdotes?
Well, I can remember how they were. They definitely were a sort of group. You could tell that they'd been together a few years because they just bounced off one another like it was going out of style. They knew, they were like in private, they were like an act as well as being on stage. And we used to go to places like we'd be staying at some country club, and I suppose in those days, those are the days we used to drink and smash a few glasses and have a good laugh. And the owners of the places would expect us to be nice boys, but we weren't quite as nice as they expected. I suppose that's where the first reputation of groups like, smashing places up, but not completely.
Surely the Beatles don't have a reputation as being...
I beg to differ, I can remember a few sort of glasses of water being spilt. I'm not going to go any further than that. It was pretty harmless stuff, but of course it was blown out of proportion, and the time, years later, when the Who used to smash up hotel rooms or whatever, or toilets, and rip things out the wall, that was a development of something that everybody was doing,
Next is a lively Beatles press conference which took place in Kansas City in 1964.
I'll direct my question to Paul. Have the receptions in the United States been what you expected them to be or had hoped for?
They've been better, actually, because somebody told us they'd be good. Excuse me. Your move. Somebody said they'd be good, but these have been marvellous, fantastic.
What has pleased you most about the reception?
The bigness of them, the largeness,
the immenseness,
the magnitude, the multitudinousness. Wonderful.
I asked the Beatles, was there any place in America that you wanted to see but did not get a chance to? Or were not having
New Orleans is one of them.
Yes? I'd like to know, do you fellas hear what you're playing when the screens go on, and how do you keep going together?
We've heard it before, anyway. It sounds louder to people who haven't been to the shows before. We're immune,
Yes?
Fuzz.
Well, he was a very nasty young man.
Old man.
Pardon? Well, he'd been told to leave the place anyway, you see. And he insisted on jumping around trying to take pictures. And we couldn't see as it was without some idiot flashing in front of us. So I thought I'd baptize him.
It's assumed that you will sing for quite some time yet, but what do you plan to do after
the bubble burst?
None of us made any plans, but John and I will probably... we have this one every day, John and I will probably carry on songwriting, and George will go into basketball.
Or roller skating. I haven't decided that.
Yes?
Would you short your grey hair?
No. Only if you show him yours. It all up, you see. And we're on telly. You can look nice. What do you know about barber shops? We never
don't do anything about them when we're not on tour.
Don't even think about them.
Is this the highest guarantee you've had in the United States?
I think so. Is it, Derek?
Yes.
It's very high. Really.
Highest ever in the world, we're told. That may not be so. We're told.
Correct. Did you
That's correct.
Back to the hairdo one. What care and treatment does the hair get?
It's a bit of combing, bit of washing.
Nothing special.
No treatment. We never put any hair oil on it because it makes it go funny, you see. It makes mine go funny.
We're from PICK in Springfield, Missouri, and it was rumored all over town a couple of days ago that you all had tried to get reservations to stay at one of the hotels in Springfield, and that you were turned down repeatedly. Is this true?
No.
Well, we don't make them anyway, and the ones that have turned us down, well, it's their privilege.
And we're not going to Springfield anyway. So we don't have a hotel there.
KUDL News, what is one question
you would like to be asked at a press conference that probably nobody's ever asked you?
Can't think of one.
Oh, no.
I think everything's being asked. Yes.
Whatever came of the car wreck that you had in London? You had an accident with someone.
Oh, it wasn't a wreck. I only just tapped into some fella and knocked the headlamp in. But you see, when the further away you are, the worse the damage appears, you see. I mean, over here, the car was a write-off, but actually it wasn't. And it was fixed within 3 days. No. The other fella's insurance company paid because it was his fault. I'm a good driver, so...
Considering making America your home, would you consider that?
No. Well, because England's our home, you know. We like the place, but not to live here.
How much of the hysteria that greets you do you feel is real, and how much is pretended by the little girls that adore you?
You can't tell. Doesn't matter.
There's a lot of it that the papers, you know, help create. It's probably not real, but there's also a lot, I think.
What's the origin of the name Beatles? Why did you choose that?
John thought of it.
I just thought of it, you know, there was no reason. Same as you pick a name for anything. Really.
How does your wife feel about the girls screaming and running after you?
Well, she knows they never catch me, so...
Ringo, are you going to have your tonsils taken out, and do you have that offer yet from a girl to send the tonsils to her?
Yeah, I'm going to have them out, and we got the telegram, but I don't think I'll give them to her.
We're going to auction them off.
It's disgusting.
We'd like to know if there was ever any truth to the rumor, John, that you might leave the group.
No. Don't know where it started, you know, it just sort of appeared somewhere.
We can't get rid of him anyway.
America? Oh, Australia.
Did you make any new records
You got it.
while you were in Hollywood?
No.
We did do an album, but it was only for a souvenir.
It's not for general release.
Not for sale. It was so terrible, that's why.
After you return home, where will your next tour take you?
Britain. Around Britain.
We do a month's tour of Britain.
Is there anything you wanted to do in Kansas City on your visit here that you didn't get a chance to do? Anything particular that you wanted to see, or anyone you wanted to visit by any chance?
No, I didn't hear about anybody we know. So.
Truman?
Not particularly, no.
Have you bought any clothes in the United States, or anything you wear from
This American.
This is a
I bought
fellow
4
described it
shirts.
on the radio yesterday as a typical Liverpool Dockers outfit, so got it in Key West.
You ever wear a tie?
Me? Yeah, when I can find it.
I've got one of
Never
his suits.
find my stuff.
John,
You know what?
I've got one of his suits.
Nothing.
The British government
Oh,
are
they're
getting
getting a loss, you know.
We'll end up with about $10 when we get home.
Springfield. Sure, you're all writing books, but one of the subject matter.
No, John's the only one who writes.
We haven't learned yet.
Brad, since your return to America this time, have you been asked to reappear on Ed Sullivan's program?
I believe so, yes. I'm not sure about that.
Don't think we've got time, though.
Yes, it hasn't been fitted in yet.
Well, it won't fit in now.
You were talking earlier that the two of you might continue on and the rest of you break up the act. Is there a date set for this, that you are going to break up?
No, all I meant was that if we do break up, he asked when we do break up, which it's got to happen, that John and I will probably carry on songwriting. We didn't mean singing or anything.
How long do you think that it will be before it does
It's
happen?
another role with me.
No idea, really. Could happen tomorrow, you know, after the Kansas City day.
here that wants to know if you're doing the Playboy. Would any of you care to give us any of your views, I don't mean to be smart by this, by anything on religion or politics?
Well, we're not interested in either.
No, that's about it.
Fred, would you consider, or is it being planned that a movie will be made of your whole life, school, tavern club?
No, they couldn't put that kind of thing on the screen. Not yet, anyway.
One of you, I can't remember which one, said that to you, politics, you didn't like politics. It was like beer. You didn't like the taste.
Yeah.
Yet when you were in Chicago, you made the comment that if you were going to be for anyone in the presidential election, you'd be for LBJ.
We didn't, we said Eisenhower.
No, she...
What about in your own country? You're going back to a general election campaign over there. The Tories have been pretty good.
We're not going to vote over there.
So of the Labour.
Well, I don't know enough about it. That's why I'm not voting.
None of us do, you know.
We don't follow it, you know.
If I can find out which one takes the least tax, I'll vote for them.
In New Orleans, you met with Fats Domino. Could you tell me how that meeting came about and what occurred?
Frogman Henry said, you know, he'd try and arrange for us to meet him because we've always liked him. And he brought him round with a friend of his, and we just talked for about an hour and had a couple of shots taken for his kids.
Found him getting groceries in a store or something.
Had a sing-song with him.
Yeah, I lost it a year ago. I just get it back now, actually, for speeding 3 times. If they catch you 3 times, you lose it. I got caught.
Wasn't fast enough.
Why did you want to go to New Orleans? What about the town?
Well, it's
the clubs and that.
You know, you just hear about New
Hear the
Orleans.
sounds, man.
The music?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's all good clubs and all.
Any questions from the elder gentleman over there? Any of you? Yeah?
What is your reaction to these girls who come up to your hotel room and tear up sheets and anything that you've discarded, or the cigarette butts that you leave around?
Well, they do it after we leave. It's all right, you know, if the hotel manager
Don't
doesn't
go up there
mind.
ripping them while we're still asleep.
With all the girls chasing all over the world, who's probably the most exciting woman you've met throughout the world?
Ringo's mother was pretty hot. Only joking,
Yeah, we like American cigarettes and we smoke filters. But we're not advertising anybody's cigarettes unless they're going to give us a few million free.
Do you do anything for free at all?
Yeah, charity shows, that's about all.
I'd like to ask George, I heard that in the Lafayette Hotel in Atlantic City, a girl had climbed 8 stories on the side of the building, jumped in the window and grabbed you in your nightclothes, and then was arrested.
No, it's untrue. I heard a noise in the next room, but it was just policemen chasing her around, and she jumped on Ringo, actually.
When that bird was running around the room,
I was chasing her.
No.
No, he's not right.
No, we haven't got a script writer or anything for the next movie yet. Unless they got one while we were away. We were told 83 yesterday.
85.
85, sorry.
Million?
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it?
We're still touring.
Listen, yeah, we hear them every day on the radio.
I don't know.
Nobody's made any
I'm going to
plans.
change all mine into cents, fill up a room and dive in it.
What's this?
Just going mad.
We were curious just how much money have you made?
None of us
We
know
don't
yet.
know yet.
A lot.
Our
We
accountant
have an
just deals
accountant.
with it, you know, nobody...
We can't find him at the moment. It's a lie.
Everywhere you go, you get tons of gifts, some good and some bad. Whatever becomes of all this?
Some of them get shipped to England. If we get cakes and that, we try and get the fella who's promoting the show to give them to hospitals because we can't eat all that cake.
How about personal effects like jewelry and matters like...
Well, I've got a case full, man. I want to root through it, see what you like.
Just wanted to know.
I want to know about the school and the 4 fellas. Did they have any special musical training in this, the background, in college things?
None of us can read or write music.
We're all
We've all been to
self-taught.
school, you know. I mean,
All self-taught.
ordinary
Two lessons
education.
at school.
Oh, eh?
Which of you consider yourself the best singer or the best musician?
Ringo.
Well, I think John's the best.
No, I think you.
No, John.
We don't consider
You've
it.
got soul. No, I don't think any of us are very good. Really?
Mr. Gunter, have you a question?
Enough to get round in the Reaper barn in Hamburg.
Traveling the past year, so I'd like to know, is there any particular place in the world that you like the most, you'd like to return to? Or do you still...
Britain.
England.
I'd return there.
On times off, I've read articles and statistics that you visit children's hospitals. Have you visited any in America?
I've never visited one at all.
Well, there's a picture of you in one.
What?
Children in the children's.
We've never been to
Oh
one.
no, we had while we were making a film, they brought up a lot of orphans.
It was at Easter.
Yeah, that's
to
right.
see us.
We didn't go there.
Don't normally have time.
What?
We went to one hospital, I think, ages ago, when some girl had hitchhiked to see us, and somebody stabbed her on the way.
That's right, yeah.
That's true.
With all your world travels, when do you have time for social activities?
When we're not touring, we don't tour all the time.
Around, you know.
About 3 more
Only
questions.
We tour about half the year, you know.
As idols, rather impressionable youngsters, do you ever feel a heavy responsibility watching the conduct you have?
No. Only towards the press. It's the only time we watch it.
Are you as closely guarded in England as you are here?
When
On
we're on
tour.
tour. If we're not on tour, they just leave us alone.
Mr. Gunter, question.
What do you think of the American press?
They're quite fair.
They're all nice.
Except for you.
Except for you. Can't stand you anymore.
He's a good friend,
winning
really.
cards.
And one last one from you.
Paul, I noticed I saw pictures of your father, and I noticed that he had spinning hair.
Well, he's 65. What do you expect?
Let it thin, you know.
Who cares, you know?
Okay.
Counterculture entertainer Tiny Tim was much loved by all of the Beatles. Here he assesses the group's musical contribution in a rare interview in New York.
Before 1955, it was all straight melodic music. When the white man's rock and roll came in the 50s, it started to divert. But when the Beatles came on in 63, they started a new cult. They started the modern art of popular music. In other words, it was something that you just couldn't buy a sheet music copy and learn it just like that. You had to hear the record as well. You had to know what the beat was saying. And that's what the Beatles did. They started the modern art of popular music. People like Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Tony Bennett. And I say it in all respect, never succeeded after that because they all stayed back. They refused to go with the flow. They refused to take the challenge of this new sound, which is a new sound. And basically, it's hard to convert from a conventional art to something new. But the kids who were growing up were able to adapt to it. And basically, that's what the Beatles started. They started a new trend in music.
Certainly one of the biggest controversies to ever land at the Beatles' doorstep was John Lennon's controversial remarks made to a London-based journalist that the Beatles were indeed more popular than Jesus Christ. Here John and Paul fend off yet another full frontal assault from the media.
I think that from what my views are, from what I read or observed of Christianity and what it was and what it has been or what it could be, it just seems to me to be shrinking. I'm not knocking it or saying it's bad. I'm just saying it seems to be shrinking and losing contact.
And we all deplore the fact that it is, you know. That's the main point
nothing
about
better
it all.
seems to be replacing it, so we're not saying anything about that.
You know, and if you say something that you think may vaguely in a way be helpful, you know, because I mean, you know, if it is on the decline in any way, then to say it's on the decline must be helpful.
It's silly going on saying, yes, it's all fine, and yeah, we're all Christians and we're all doing this. And we're all not doing it.
And, you know, there'll probably be a big resurgence
thought.
of Christianity now. Might as well, yes.
Mr. Lennon, are you all Christians?
Well, we were brought up, I don't profess to be a practicing Christian. Well, I think Christ was what he was, and if anybody says anything great about him, I believe. But I'm not a practicing Christian like I was brought up to be. I don't have unchristian thoughts.
Was there as much repercussion and reaction to your statements throughout Europe and other countries of the world as there was here in America?
I don't think Europe heard about it. They will now. But it was just England, and I sort of got away with it there as much that nobody took offence and saw through me. And over here, it just, you know, what I said, it went the other way.
Known not only as a top-flight musician and composer, John Lennon also shared deep convictions about the role of the artist in society, the futility of war, and the great need for both inner and outer peace in the world. Here he touches on these and other weighty subjects in a 1969 press conference in Toronto.
And it's like saying, why bother keeping on Christianity because Jesus got killed or something? You know, we don't think people have tried advertising before. You know, we think advertising is it. You know, and if we can start there, you know, I mean, if anybody brings out a new product, say, pretend piece is new then, because we've never had it, they start advertising, it's sell, 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 you know, and whatever gimmickry and irrelevancies that are going on during the advert, it's the drink or the car they buy at the end of it, whether there's chicks in it and white horses and snow and all that. The product sells, and we believe in selling, you know.
John, a few months ago you had a campaign going to have a ship in the Mediterranean, a peace ship in the Mediterranean. Is this still...
Well, this is like somebody else's gig and we're helping him with it. He's in New York now trying to raise money for the ship. We did what we could out of America. We couldn't do much, you know. We could only say, like, we're with you, and you can put our name on the ad and try and use us as best you can. For his plan is, he has the ship, he's got a lot of kids to paint it, and he's in New York, and he needs some kind of transmitter which costs a lot. And you know, I'm not like that with him, because I met him for 5 minutes. I liked him, I believe in his campaign, and we've done what we can for him. He's still in New York, and that's still on, you know.
Last time you were here in Montreal, you mentioned that you had the acorns, which were a symbol.
King Hussein planted his. You'd like to know. He's the only one.
Is this still part of your campaign? The acorn is still...
Yes, we believe acorn is a seed. We'll keep sending them till everybody's planted one, you know. We sent them to all the people, all the world leaders' addresses we could get together. We've had about 20 replies from here and there. I don't know who, so it's no good asking me because I can't remember. But we've had replies saying, yes, thank you, and some just saying, yes, we got it, you know. So the ones that said thank you, we guessed it, sort of.
You intend to go
John, have you got anything to say about music? Anything coming out first here?
Music, well, we have an album out today, folks. It should have been out 2 weeks ago, but they hustled it out today.
How about the next Beatles album?
Next Beatles album, January. One after that, March or something, you know.
John?
Plenty of product, you know.
I remember you saying sometime...
Ask EMI.
I remember you saying sometime you thought that we'd have peace by the year 2000. Do you still think that?
Well, I don't want to say, I'd sooner say by 1970, you know, and then I believe in that positive thinking bit. So I'll try and knock all the negative thoughts out. Let's say 1970, and then when it's 70, we say, oh, we're wrong in 1971.
That might be over by 99. 1999.
Optimistic.
I think we get it as soon as people realise that they have the power, and the power doesn't belong to Mr. Trudeau, Mr. Wilson, or Mr. Nixon. That we are the power, the people are the power, you know. And that as soon as people are aware they have the power, then they can have what they want, you know. And if it's a case of, well, they don't know or they don't know what to do, let's advertise to them to tell them that they have an option.
What can they do? Like, what can we do?
They've got the vote, haven't they?
What can we do, yeah.
You know. Well, get it, you know. I mean, they're going to get it in England, you know. I mean, you'll have the vote, you know. You will be the establishment. There's no good attacking it and breaking it down because you'll have to build it up again. That's all we say.
What do you think will happen when the young people will be tired to fight for peace that they won't get?
Well, they have the alternative, you know. You either get tired fighting for peace or you die, you know. That's the alternative.
What do you think of John? What do you think about his statement where he says he hasn't granted interviews because he's simply being used to sell papers?
Who?
Bob Dylan said that in Rolling Stone.
Oh, well, I don't know, you know. Bob's a home-loving lad at the moment, you know.
Will there be a car race in Mosport?
A car race? Is it? I don't know, you know.
It's a race. I think there's one usually scheduled at that time.
Oh, what's this about car?
There's no race.
No, there's no race. The race is for peace. It's embarrassing, you know.
Are you still involved in Eastern philosophy as you work with
Well, I don't know quite what it is, you know. I mean, if I'm involved in anything, I'm involved in Yoko's version of Zen Buddhism, you know. And all those philosophies have good basis and they're right, you know. It's like all the religions are right too. I just haven't the time nor the capability of reading through 2 million years worth of philosophy, because the answer is yes and now and all that.
How about meditation?
Meditation, occasionally I use it, you know, it's like anything. I'm not a very good get up in the morning and do your exercise. Meditation is a mental exercise. It works all right, it does all they say it does. Now the thing I use to attain the state that meditation got me to is diet.
Diet?
Yes.
And our mantra is peace, naturally, you know.
Yes, we've adopted that and used peace as the mantra, you know.
Were you in India just recently on holiday?
Yes, we went to Greece and India, yeah.
Your campaign seems so big and so general. Have you not thought of the idea that if you zeroed in on one specific problem in the world, you might find you were more effective?
I don't know, you mean like just say concentrate on the Israeli-Arab war or something like that,
yes.
You know.
But the world is getting very small.
I don't think it's, I think we have to gather all the positiveness from everywhere and then let them, if it's mental or whatever way, concentrate on each individual case. It's like we believe in prevention rather than cure, and we'd like to be able to concentrate on both, you know, like cure the cancer patients in hospital, but we really are after prevention, you know. It's unfortunate about the people that have got cancer now, but we hope there's enough people we can help or that are helping that with what we're doing anyway we can concentrate on areas. But we believe in just trying to, maybe it's wrong, you know, but we believe in trying to prevention, you know. We've really got the next generation in mind.
Country rocker Ronnie Hawkins knew all of the Beatles, but shared a particularly close bond with John. In 1969, when the Lennons were crisscrossing the world on their whirlwind campaign to help end the Vietnam War, they stayed with Ronnie on his rural Ontario farm. The Hawk recalls just a bit of the attendant madness of having a Beatle in residence.
Well, I got a phone call from England asking, it wasn't from John, it was from John's right-hand man then, Anthony Fawcett.
Right.
And they asked about if John could stay at the house because they'd just been through on a bed-in. When I met them at Maple Leaf Gardens, they were familiar with some of the old songs I had out in the 50s because I had been to England in the late 50s and 60s and played, and so that was before they'd even gotten into music, you know. Behind me then was nothing but fields. It's all concrete and steel now. But they got out there burning all the papers in between the lithographs, and there was a bunch of them, and they didn't know. And all of a sudden, they got out of control and got into the grass, and then finally somebody yelled, and they had to call the fire department.
I heard John tried to fight the thing with a little bucket.
Yeah, he had a sand. He was just doing anything he could to help, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But he had a lot of fun. John had an awful lot of fun I had jiggers and skidoos and stuff out there, right. And evidently he'd never done any of that because I heard later, I was told, that he ordered 3 or 4 and had them sent to his place in England.
Huh. Mm-hmm.
Oh, we had, I don't know, very few people know about this, but we had people that came, I put security out there, and a bunch of cats come over the fence, just had to be in there, and my security got in a little jackpot and broke some heads, mm-hmm. and we got sued over it. But how ignorant can you be? There's no trespassing, and
they obviously want to be alone.
Yeah, or they'd open the gates. You know,
what did John think when he heard someone got hurt?
Well, he really hated that. He just said, well, can't you ease up a different way? But there's sometimes, some situations, if someone takes a swing at you when you push them back and they hit you, then the cats get hot.
Journalist and Lennon intimate Richie York confided in me the last-minute rigors of organizing John and Yoko's appearance at the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival in 1969.
I happened to be at Apple on a Friday afternoon. I was setting up an interview to do with, actually that interview with George, it was on the next Monday. And I just went to John's office to say hello. And Brower and all these guys in Toronto were hustling away on the phone. And he was sort of half interested in doing it, you know, and he wanted to know if the guys were right to do it with, Brower and Walker and so on, and Eaton, the whole lot. And I just happened to be Johnny on the spot, you know. And I said, yeah, these guys are right, let's go on the phone, let's get this together. And we put it together that afternoon, and they left the next morning.
From the very beginning, perhaps the Beatles' most trusted employee and friend was their late road manager, Mal Evans. Apple executive Peter Brown recalled the big man's tragic death at the hands of the Los Angeles police in 1977, and John's somewhat offbeat reaction to the news.
John told me the story when it happened, because I went for tea one day, and John told me, did you know that Mal had been killed? And I didn't know, that he was getting in a bad shape, and he was shot by the LAPD, and the fact that, his ashes were lost in the mail. He thought it was ironically amusing, the fact that, that the ashes should be lost. He couldn't help but think that was funny.
Yoko Ono, John Lennon's ever-controversial wife, spoke to me in the Lennons' posh New York apartment in 1983.
I was like most sort of end of 50s, beginning of 60s artistic crowd, getting more and more complex, becoming a little bit out of touch with your own body, shall we say, that sort of bag. And here comes this man who's sort of doing very simple chords most of the time, and saying, what do you really mean? Don't give me all this sort of roundabout tiptoeing. I consider myself just normal in a sense, touchy, If somebody says something nasty about me, well, I get hurt, And the way I coped with the situation was almost like a miracle, Part of me was, part of me is still in shock. And the other side of me was like a little baby, I felt like I was just turning to be 5 years old, And so, why did this happen? And I need a big teddy bear or whatever. So I would say that it was just the situation that put me in a situation, and I just coped with it. If you were in that situation, you might have done the same or maybe even better, I don't know. So don't think that that was me. It was just something that's interesting as a human document.
Drummer Steve Holley, Paul McCartney's percussionist in Wings' final lineup, spoke to me some time ago in New York regarding not only Paul's down-to-earth lifestyle, but McCartney's intimate relationships with his wife, the fans, and of course, his music. Let's listen in.
I think more to the point was that he was open enough to accept anything that was offered. In other words, creatively, yeah. If I'd have come up with a great song, it would have been recorded. The fact of the matter is that he's such a strong, prolific songwriter, and I do write, but not necessarily with that amount of strength. So even when I did come up with a song, 9 times out of 10, I said, well, fine, but I've got this, Well, her thing really is the fact that, obviously she's so close to Paul, and he wants her there for the comfortability of the situation, and she can play the lines on, like single note lines, and she plays pad chord stuff, and it's all pretty much programmed. She's the first person to admit she's no virtuoso keyboard player. I mean, she can't whiz around the board with lightning fingers or solo with the guys when they're just jamming out, but she's capable of learning parts and playing them. I didn't speak to him I felt as if I couldn't speak to him. It was too personal and too close, and I wasn't the person to ring up and say, hey, I'm really sorry about John, I'm a great admirer of his lifestyle and the way he runs his life, it's great. The kids are very unspoiled. They go to regular schools. They've all got great attitudes, which I think is a remarkable feat under the circumstances. He never talked about the Beatles in the first. It was almost like a taboo subject in the first year or so that I was with him. As time went past, he started to open up a little bit more, and we had some sort of interesting conversations. But there's a lot of stuff there. I think probably people at the Beatle Fest know more about what happened than he did, to some extent. Perfect gentleman, he goes out of his way to, it doesn't matter who it is, he'll take time, he'll speak to people, he's amazing. I think he was always the one that kept their image like that, he was always the one that went out of his way to shake people's hands, to do this, to do that, John was far more critical of that situation altogether. We started rehearsing the Tug of War album, and then George came into production, and I read in the newspaper that the band had broken up. That was the first I heard about it, and I rang Paul and said, what is this? I just read that Wings is no more. I don't know anything about it. He says, oh yeah, I've been meaning to call you, And it was like, well, I can understand that it was hard for him, but yeah, the way I view the situation now is I had a tremendous opportunity, which I used. I gained an incredible amount of experience and shot a long way up the ladder, credibility-wise.
Of all the many far-out characters that have crossed the Beatles' orbit over the years, Jojo Lane is surely one of the most controversial. As Denny Lane's wife, she had intimate access to the inner workings of Paul McCartney and Wings, as well as ongoing friendly relationships with George Harrison and John Lennon. Here she remembers a starry moonlit night in the Highlands of Scotland, where she shared an evening of intimate conversation with Paul and Linda McCartney. In addition, she also recalls spending New Year's in the company of Paul and his Liverpool family.
So Paul starts getting into the romance, and Linda as well, about how it was when they had Mary and Stella, and how he was by Linda's, bedside the whole time and slept in the hospital, and you don't leave your wife's side, and it's the greatest feeling in the world when you see your first child and all that kind of thing.
Playing the guitars.
Yeah, we did some campfire singing. A couple of the Wildlife Wings records. I'd have to look at the album to remember them. And a couple of Beatles songs. There was one, In My Life, that song I remember singing, In My Life. Mary Had a Little Lamb. Yeah, we had a good old little sing-along. Paul sang Linda Had a Little Lamb. That's what it was. Her name was Mary. That's how it came about, the conversation. So I'm like really getting into the way he's talking about it and getting all excited, and I felt little Lane kicking in my stomach as Paul's talking, and I was just looking around. I was high, and I'm thinking what a beautiful atmosphere it was. Paul,
talking to doobies.
Mm-hmm. Paul and Linda, all of us. Paul and Linda were, being so nice. It really was. It was one of the nicest memories of them. Just everybody was relaxed. There was no airs or graces about it all. They were like really happy for Denny and I, or I thought they were. It was all of Paul's family, Auntie Ginny, all the people that he mentions in the song Let 'Em In. Yeah. They were wonderful. I mean, the family, Paul's family were the best, the most typical English Liverpudlians. Just so you couldn't come from a better family. I mean, the warmth, the soul. And Kate Robbins, who was his cousin, loved me. I mean, I had open arms from all his family. I never got any bad feeling. They thought I was wonderful. I don't think that nobody ever said anything, but I felt I was just as welcomed as Linda, if not more, because I could relate to them more and talk to them more. I never really saw Linda ever really speaking to them. She was always just beside Paul, you see. I mean, I mixed with them. I never really saw Linda mixing with his family that much. I mean, she was just, I suppose she probably feels she didn't have to, or she was obviously from another world anyway. But Kate Robbins was an excellent, excellent singer. The memories up in Liverpool was Kate at the piano. I mean, his whole family is so musical. They had a beautiful piano. Just everybody singing around. I mean, I can see them right now just singing Mull of Kintyre. I mean, that's like the family of the Mull of Kintyre. Everybody singing those type of songs, the old English and New Year's songs. And it was beautiful. I was there for the whole, most of the mixing of the band and the run, but Red Rose Speedway, I was there, I would say, for just about it all. And that's why that's my favorite album. Every song, I'm pretty certain I was there for just about every song, just about. And it was just, and I was in the recording session specifically when Little Lamb Dragonfly was, they were doing the harmonies, Denny Sywell, and I was sitting like in a corner, and I remember even singing myself, just the high bit, while in the room. It was just everything, it was the most magical experience of any of the Wings session I had ever been in, and I remember when they kept playing it over again. As you know, it's such a pretty harmony. And Denny made fun of me and told Paul, and Paul smiled, because as they were playing it over, it was so beautiful, I started crying. And I had tears in my eyes, and Denny came over to me, and he kind of went like that, because I was sitting on the floor cross-legged. And as you could hear the harmonies in the back, Little Lamb Dragonfly and all that, he kind of lifted my chin up. He says, "Are you crying?" And I just went like that, and he just said, "You old, I don't know, soppy little girl," or something like that. And he went over and said something to Paul, and Paul just smiled. Denny said, "She's crying, the little girl's crying." He kept doing that. I mean, what can I say? I mean, all the songs, when they recorded them, you knew they were going to be hits. I mean, they stayed in your mind.
Yeah, well, what was it like in the studio?
Let 'Em In.
Like in the studio?
Oh, wonderful. We were in all the studios, Abbey Road, and of course, the Abbey Road session reminded me of the Let It Be. It was like here you were where all the famous pictures were taken. You know, EMI, that was a great student. And George Martin was just absolutely always brilliant. He was such a distinguished gentleman.
Best remembered as a down-and-dirty rocker and genteel balladeer, Paul McCartney also has a profound attachment to classical music as well. Here he discusses the creation of his first full-fledged classical work, the Liverpool Oratorio.
Well, one of the things about this, you know, is that while I was writing this with Carl, I was on my world tour. So I was actually doing the two things at the same time. And when I got a couple of months off from the world tour, or weeks or even days, I'd grab a couple of days and keep going there. So it seemed okay to balance. And the two helped each other, really. Doing the sort of rock and roll stuff would keep the classical stuff nice and free and flexible. And doing the classical stuff allowed me to be a bit freer when I was writing some of the kind of pop stuff. I think the bearing it might have on my future work, I think I'd like to do more of it. And I think in the next stuff I'm writing, the kind of the pop stuff, the way I've approached this thing with Carl is kind of similar to George Martin and I, how we used to work. So I think that will have a little bit bearing on my next pop album. I think the main thing is that when we started writing, Carl and I started to fall into all my normal tricks, where if you're writing a 3-minute, 5-minute piece, you'll do your first verse, then you immediately look for the second verse, then you immediately look for a chorus, and you immediately look for a middle, you repeat the chorus. There's a kind of formula that most people stick to, with maybe an instrumental section in the middle of it all. And the interesting thing about this was Carl pointed out to me that there didn't have to be any formula. We could do anything we wanted. We could have a verse, then we could go to a completely different tune, and we could go to a completely different key. It's very flexible, you know, the long form. So it was very interesting to write. But I think the basic difference is just that you don't have to stick to any structure. You're a lot freer. You've got more time to explore. First thing I did would probably be round about the time of The Family Way, yeah. Because I've always been interested in music, not just rock and roll. You know, I mean, I used to like jazz. I like people like Cole Porter, and I would listen to people like Bach, and you know, like everybody, you know, sort of da 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 da, or you know, Nutcracker Suite, or you know, all the popular classical stuff. So I've been interested in all of that sort of stuff for a while. So I did a couple of things with people like the Black Dyke Mills Band. I did a record with them. That was kind of a little bit away from what I'd done. And then, as you say, I did the soundtrack for a film called The Family Way with George Martin. So I was starting to kind of explore those other areas, just for fun, really. You know, it's very interesting, if you're interested in music, to go outside your own field. I've been in the music business a long time now, and even if you don't know how to write it down, you can't help picking up things. And you know, if you work with great musicians, you see them working, and you just start to understand what's going on. So I think Carl was probably a bit surprised to find out, you know, that I did have a bit of musical knowledge. Now, I don't look like I do, but obviously I've been around quite a while now.
Here Paul remembers the day George Harrison first heard the plaintive strains of McCartney's moving choral work.
He heard a bit. I came round to the house, and George is very interested in all kinds of music, you know, like I am. In fact, he's totally besotted with George Formby at the moment. But that's another story. Anyway, I played him a little bit of this, and I think he liked it, you know. I think he was a bit shocked when a sort of voice came in, you know, he went, hello. Because it is a change for us, you know, for that kind of voice. So it is a little bit of a, you know, culture shock to me, as it was to George. But I'm interested in it, you know, I like it. I think you can get as much emotion with that kind of a voice as you can with what I would call a sort of normal voice.
By now, we all know that Paul McCartney is an inspired songwriter, but how did he actually pen all those songs? It's a well-known fact that he has no formal musical education and can't even read music, but yet, for the last 30 years, he has astonished the world with his well-crafted, deeply tuneful creations. McCartney touched upon the mechanics of working with his muse in a recent Liverpool press conference.
I feel like I've got musical skills just over the years, from just the music I've been involved in. But it's almost a superstition of mine. I've got a feeling that if I start learning how to do it now, in the kind of quotes, the proper way, I'll lose a lot of my freedom. If I'd have known how you're supposed to write a violin solo, I think I would have written a very different one from this. But I have no idea what you're supposed to do, so I just take chances that maybe somebody else wouldn't do.
Always a great supporter of charities over the years, Paul McCartney has recently involved himself in a very special campaign especially dear to the former Beatles' heart. Paul talked about the project at a recent press conference.
A couple of years ago, I came back to my old school, which is called the Liverpool Institute, which is near the cathedral there. And it had been closed down by the council, and it was in a pretty bad state. So I was just coming on a kind of nostalgic trip to have a look at it and just remember my old school. In fact, this is where we used to come for our speech days, the school. We'd have all my school out there, with the parents up there. I walked up on here to get a prize once, knees trembling. But no, I showed him round the school because what we're trying to do is save it so as it doesn't fall down. And the idea that we've had is to create a kind of a fame school, a performing arts school, which I think is perfect for Liverpool because there's so much talent in this city. And what happened was I met a black guy after the Toxteth riots, and he said to me, he said, you know what this city needs? He said, it needs a fame school. And it actually quite interested me, the idea. I thought, yeah, that's maybe possible. We put the idea of saving my old school together with making a new school, and we're now getting to the stage where I've been this morning showing the Minister for Inner Cities, Michael Portillo, round the school, trying to get him interested, trying to get the government interested in renovating it all. And number one, to save it for the past, because it was built in 1825, and you don't want to lose buildings like that, I don't think. And also to really make something very exciting for the future.
What is the closest you have come to losing life and limb?
Someplace in New Zealand, and I think Houston.
Well, just generally Texas, yeah, whenever we go to Texas, we almost get killed, because we're too busy guarding the oil down there,
Geoffrey Giuliano is the author of some 30 internationally best-selling books on the Beatles, John Lennon, and other iconic musicians of the 1960s. In 2006, his book, Paint It Black, The Murder of Brian Jones, was made into a film by Stephen Woolley and Nick Powell entitled Stoned, The Wild and Wicked World of Brian Jones. It remains a cult classic and the only film bio of the Rolling Stones. Giuliano is also a veteran journalist, having written for dozens of high-profile newspapers and magazines, including The Sunday People, The Daily Mail, The News of the World, The Mail on Sunday, Playgirl, and Rolling Stone. A noted film actor, Giuliano starred in such movies as Vikingdom, Scorpion King 3, Jules Verne's The Mysterious Island, The Fifth Execution, Far Cry 3, Fire Fire Desire, among many. In addition, he hosted the long-running North American syndicated radio series, Geoffrey Giuliano's Roots of Rock, for 5 years, as well as pioneering the audiobook industry in the 1990s by authoring, narrating, and producing over 250 original, non-book-based, interview-driven productions. Giuliano's publishers included Random House, HarperCollins, Delta Entertainment, Durkin Hayes, Playaway Audio, Speechworks, and B&B Audio, among dozens more internationally. In 1998, Random House acquired his firm Tribute Audio, for which Giuliano acted as CEO and publisher for 5 years. His best-selling audiobook, That Fateful Night, True Stories of Titanic Survivors in Their Own Words, was nominated for a Grammy. In 2014, Geoffrey Giuliano founded Icon Editions and G2 Media Arts to market his updated works as well as publish new projects. As a visual artist, Geoffrey has been showing in galleries across America since 1977, garnering impressive reviews. His first professional assignment was designing several T-shirts for The Who's Pete Townsend in 1976. Geoffrey also designed and illustrated many of his original rock biographies for the biggest publishers in the world from 1984 to 2006, as well as designing for his pioneering record label, Samba Records, in the mid-1990s. From 2006 to 2011, Geoffrey was also the primary designer for the French fashion house Cotai. When Giuliano first conceived of creating his own literary imprint, Icon Editions, he became responsible for illustrating and designing 35 book covers, several hundred CDs, DVDs, as well as dozens of promotional posters, and eventually an entire collection of exclusive fashion and art. The expansive Design by Giuliano brand grew out of Geoffrey's impressive commitment to the arts and is the culmination of a lifetime's work by an extraordinarily talented and determined Renaissance man.